Anybody using Edge, by the way? Do you like Edge? Yeah? Okay. I don't. It's not my thing. I like Internet Explorer, but you know, I Bing as well, so I'm one of the few, I guess. Hello, come on in. There's some seats left. Some. Well, yesterday I was at this in this room as an audience member with Wally's session. It feels so steep when you're up there. Is it like? Does it scare you guys? This room? Yesterday I had this. When I was speaking yesterday, I got the flat room, which was, you know, I would be more secure and more confident sitting there. And to be honest, this stage is kind of scary as well. It wiggles. So at one point, if you see me fall down, well, I will be down somewhere here. Save me, please. I'm kind of scared of this. So welcome to this Config Manager and Intune session. I did basically the same session last year. Have you? Who of you was here with the last year's session on Intune? Okay, stuff changed a little bit, so you get to see the new stuff. That's cool, but it's basically the same thing. I did, however, change something, and it was not because of a lack of time to prepare for this. I had plenty of time to prepare, but I thought maybe I could, you know, do without slides today. So I hope you can appreciate that. No slides. I'm going to try and explain everything using one tool called Zoom It. You have seen it a couple of times. You can zoom into the screen, but you can make drawings with this as well. So I'm going to try and make that happen. So this presentation contains no slides other than this one. And that's because, well, slides are boring. That by PowerPoint happens sometimes. So I'm not going to do any slide PowerPoints here. So what will we discuss? Well, first of all, I'd like to start off with the architecture of the product a little bit. So we get to see whatever a config manager has to offer and how it connects to Intune. And then I'll just go into demo and show you the options we have and how they work. We got 1 hour to do so, so let's start off with that. If you don't know me that well, I'm an IT guy from the Netherlands. I have been here at NIC for 5 years now, so I'm actually every single NIC I was here. And well, the coolest thing about NIC is that the audience is always so much participating in the session. And if you, well, do not, so you know. So you're allowed to participate in the session. Please do if you want. So you can just shout, Alex, and you can ask your questions, and I will try to answer them as well as good as possible. So this is my whiteboard for today. It's like being a little bit in class here, right? If you attend courses, well, PowerPoint is something that I don't use when I teach, so this is what I use. It's my whiteboard, and this is where I make my drawings with. So let's hope this all works out. So for those interested in starting to do Intune mobile device management in Config Manager, let's have a look on what it looks like in components. We all know Config Manager, right? There's a little database, and database is storing configuration for Config Manager, and it has its data. For example, if you set up hardware inventory, well, the setting would be that how often are we going to do hardware inventory on our clients, and the results that we get is the data. So our database basically has two types of data in there. Just in front of this database, there's a server, and that server is called our site server. The two most important components are a management point and a distribution point. And, well, to me at least, that's the two most important components. And we have a lot of clients here. And those clients, they got installed a little piece of software. And that little piece of software, it exists out of two different parts. There's a framework. The framework is, let's say, the core components of the Config Manager client. And we got different components that are responsible for whatever the client is doing. There's components for hardware inventory, software deployment, software metering, remote tools. There's the way to manage your anti-malware and such. So all those components are managed by this client. And well, one of the tasks that our framework has, it needs to connect to the management point every now and then to get and download a policy file. Policy file will just tell the framework components what all the other components need to do when and how often. So this is, in basics, the 3 most components in Config Manager. And in there, you manage Config Manager with a site structure, so everything together is a site. And, well, that's basically it. Now, the site server here is sort of a fancy web server where you connect to. All the connections are HTTP, HTTPS. You can, that's what the connection type is. And this happens by default every 60 minutes. But you can set this up if you want to do it more often. The lowest value there is 3 minutes, and the highest value is once per day, I believe. So this is, in general, in a quick view, what Config Manager does. Now, this happens on your own premise. This is in your own data center, so this is something that, well, for example, when we want to do mobile device management, we have to overthink how we can have our clients connect to this environment. So, what we will do here is we will need to set up a connection to an online environment, and that online environment is Intune. If you're new to Intune, it exists, I think it exists already for 5 or 6 years. And it started off as a workstation management online tool where you could have the ability to manage your clients, which are difficult to manage because they are never in your own premises or in your own network. So maybe you have a Norwegian company, you sell stuff like what is typical Norwegian? Akkefiet. Akkefiet. Is that good? You like that, akkefiet? Okay. I try to pronounce it right. Akkefiet. Akkefiet. And well, you try to sell this overseas in the US, so you need some US representatives, but they will never be in Norway. They got their laptops, they just work from their locations. They are never in your own network, so it's difficult to manage those machines. Well, and when we want to manage machines, what we do is we want to install updates, we like to install software, we want to know what hardware, software the machine has, maybe do some licensing management, remote administer the machine, so connect into it, help out the user with his stupid questions. And that's what we do with Intune. That is what it started off with. More and more lately, I got the feeling that that part of Intune is actually moving away from the product, and we are more and more now managing mobile devices. So, if this is the basics of Config Manager, there is, before we move on to the Intune part, there is one more thing that we should take care of, that we should see, that we look into. The way we, for example, deploy software to our clients, the way we deploy settings to our clients. When it comes to Intune, we have an online service to connect to. So if we would just quickly would make that drawing again, but with a little different perspective, we would have our site server here with the management point in the middle, and we got ourselves a distribution point here. If we would start deploying applications, well, first of all, we get the applications from somewhere. Typically this, I've done this better, but this is supposed to look like a CD or DVD. Okay, you know what? I can do this way better. There's a little circle in the middle, and there's some lines that I can do like this. It's like a shiny DVD, see? Now it's with some shining here, shining there, and if you get software like this, typically what you would do in real life is you would have a set of files, and if you buy software, you can do that. You can buy software. It's not always that you have to download stuff illegally. It's true. Sometimes you just you could pay for it. But there's complete countries that forget that fact, that you can pay for software. But here in Norway, we can say we could pay for software. If you get these install files, what you will get is, let's do this in red because it's bad. It's an install file that is not necessarily prepared for Config Manager. It's not silent. We like silent installs. Why do we like silent installs? Because of the users. To be honest, I don't care if I need to install software that I have to click next and next and next and finish for a few times. But users, they don't know what to do. Give them one button and they will click the wrong one. They do that. And then when nothing happens immediately, they start complaining. So I click this button and nothing happens. Where is my software? And I notice from first hand that it happens like this. So what we don't want to see, what we don't want to have is that our users see this happening. We don't want users to see all this. So what we do is we hire a bunch of people, let's call them people for now, and they have the job to automate the install. And automate the install means that you would go from a installation that is, well, user administered to an installation, and I hope you can see the green stuff, that it's silent. Very often it's just a /q or whatever you do to make it silent. Sometimes you have to package. Before I continue with my next part of this lecture, is there any packagers in this room now? Okay, that's too much for me to piss you all off. So, you know, what about the packaging is not a cool job, right? If you're a full-time packager, sorry for that, I'm gonna get some red cards, I know, but packaging is not cool. If you're a packager and you come home from work, your wife asks, what have you been doing? You immediately feel this I've been packaging. Ah, but you did package yesterday. Yes, something else. No, I did package something else. And then she asks, what did you package? Java. But you did package Java yesterday. Update. Is that true or not? Sorry for that. Oh, I once made this joke at the packaging event. Worst evaluation ever. all these guys went home feeling like, oh fuck, oh my, I am so screwed. So the packaging itself, right? You do this with tools like what do we have? Install Shield, Admin Studio, Setup Commander. I don't know, the packaging stuff. When you have this, what you should do is you would put all of these files on something we will call a source library. I would say this is a best location, a central location in your network. It's nothing else than a file share, but this is where you would start and configure and start copying your stuff over to the distribution points. And well, then when all your packages or applications are set, then the next step is to start deploying our stuff. Now this is where Config Manager, if you're used to 2007, and well, you know how Config Manager 2007 works, and you, for example, are a bit new to Config Manager 2012, could happen, then there's the biggest change, to me at least, between the 2007 and 2012 versions. What happens is that in 2012, Config Manager, the scariest thing ever happened. Because what happened is that that product is now user-centric, which basically means that the user has some kind of control here. And that sucks. Because now the user is more important to us. We used to deploy software to computers, and when we had it on the computer, the user could start using it, and the user would then just be happy with what it got. Now, user-centric means that we do not only have the user, for example, choose the software they like to use, for example, 7-zip or WinRAR, or iTunes or Zune. It still exists. And then you never know. But it can choose, but the software is now sent more often to users. Except, for example, your operating system deployments or Windows updates. But if you deploy software, it's now more or less user-centric. So when we deploy, we very often deploy to a collection of users. Which is not bad, but you know, it's the way it works. Now, the user itself typically would just use a computer again with this little piece of software in the back, and that little piece of software is the framework and its components. This is what we have to deploy to. However, the user is now not only a user with a laptop that we provide, or a desktop, or a virtual desktop we provide, but the user can now also bring his own device. Bring your own device. It's easiest to just draw an iPhone with this, because, well, it's just a couple of, right? It's one circle and a square, that's an iPhone. You could also deploy this, let's try to do a Windows tablet. As long as it's not Windows RT, we should be fine. This is Windows tablet, or it could be whatever kind of hardware, whatever kind of tablet you have. So mobile devices are now right. People can bring them themselves, or we could, and let's say the green people because we are good, we are the administrators, and we are evil. So this is how we look. We are evil admins. What we do here is we can also provide our users the mobile devices we think they should use. We can pre-configure everything for them. However, software goes to a user, and that user brings its own device. So if this is the case, and these two devices, the mobile devices, are involved, then we must find a way to, well, manage those devices. And with mobile device management, we do not mean the stuff that we had, for example, using Exchange ActiveSync, just like set up a PIN code requirement, and maybe we could switch off Bluetooth or the camera, that's basically it, and tell how to connect to Exchange. But nowadays, mobile device management means a lot more than that. We want to deploy software to these devices. We'd like to manage some policies and make them work. We want them to work. And we also would like to pre-configure the devices a little bit, maybe with Wi-Fi setups or certificate setups. So therefore, there has to be done a lot more now. Now, if our SCCM site, let's say this is our SCCM site still, if our SCCM site only provides us with management for these normal workstations, then we need to add something else. And that something else is called Microsoft Intune. And this is supposed to look like a cloud and not a piece of bread. In Intune, Intune is an online service which actually is part of Office 365 or Azure. To be honest, I totally lost track on Azure, Intune, and Office 365. It changes so incredibly fast. You have to it's a full-time job only to keep up with it. Now, I also teach some Azure stuff, and when I start teaching Azure stuff on Mondays, Sunday evening, I spend a couple of hours to see if all the buttons are still there. See if it's still the same thing as I thought it was last time I checked. So maybe the best thing that you should remember for Azure is that your job will change every day, which is pretty cool, because tomorrow you could have completely different functionality than you would have yesterday, but you have to just keep up. You always have to keep up with this. So I just named this Azure, and because the reason for this is that I named this Azure because there is a little database here, and that little database is the Azure Active Directory, Azure AD. One of the things that we like to achieve is that we like to, well, synchronize that Azure AD with our own Active Directory domain services. And one of the steps is to synchronize this. You have this nice tool for this, AD Connect, right? Or dir sync. And it's able to synchronize from your local AD to the online AD. One of the things that we need to do to make it work, to make these mobile devices work for our users, is that we want to make life easy for our user. And we, the administrators, we need to make it as easy as possible because, well, our users are stupid. So if we would provide them with 2 logon names and 2 different passwords, they would start, well, forgetting passwords as if they didn't with just one, but still you have to provide them with the same stuff. So what we want to do here is we want to make sure that when a user has a logon name internally or on-premise, it should be the exact same thing online. One of the things we could do is provide this Azure AD with, for example, our domain names. So the default Azure AD is something.onmicrosoft.com. We can start renaming this to our own. I recently registered the website mscloud.wtf. It works. That's the best domain name that I could get. So that's the one I'm going to use in the future. This domain, if I have a user, I can have a user called Alex at mscloud.what the fun. What a lot of fun. So mscloud.what the fun. So if a user logs on to its local AD with alex@mscloud.wtf, then it should be the same thing here. So we can set up the domain namings, and we do this in Azure. For the next step for our user is to start, well, connecting into something. But if we want to connect to Azure AD, then and Intune, we have that Intune service here. And the Intune service has its own little, wrong button, has its own little configuration database. The database that it uses, just like a config manager database, for settings and for data. And that database exists for a long time because it had Windows workstation management in there for a long time. Windows mobile or mobile device management is in there for a long time. So we have this database. The thing is that we would like to synchronize our config manager database that we have here, and we'd like to synchronize this with, let's do another color here. We want to synchronize this with our Intune database. Now, I don't have to tell you, I think, that you need an Intune account before you start with this, right? So you have an Intune account, you create this, you build this in 5 minutes, and it's up. So, and then one of the things that you need to do is set up the connection between config manager and Intune. Intune itself works in 2 modes. Intune itself works in 2 modes. You can either have Intune as a standalone environment, or you could use Intune as config manager integrated. I'll just name it like this, config manager integrated. When it comes to mobile device management, it's one of the 2. So when you just start off with Intune and you just start managing your mobile devices, Intune can do that for you, no worries, and it has all the functionality, and actually all the new mobile device management in Intune happens first. Config Manager has to follow what Intune decides on what it's capable of doing when it comes to mobile device management. So Intune has most of the options, but Config Manager follows. And if you have been to Wally's session, you have seen that updates now come through this servicing node that will just download new functionality for Config Manager, and very often it is based on what Intune has to offer, especially when it comes to mobile device management. So we had 2 options, and it's only one of the 2. So when you start off with Intune, it's standalone, it's always standalone, but you have the option to migrate and connect Config Manager into Intune. Once you have set up your Azure AD synchronization, and you have Config Manager running, what you could do is you can create a Intune subscription, and the Intune subscription is going to use the Intune connection point, the Intune connector or connection point, to connect to this database. So this component is responsible for sending its configuration into the Intune database. And this happens quite fast, actually. You can do changes in Config Manager console and will immediately send its data into Intune. You will notice very fast that your clients will see the new stuff happening, the new steps happening. So this component is responsible for setting up and and connecting your Config Manager environment into Intune. What you'll get is a warning message. It says, hey, if you change Intune from standalone to Config Manager integrated, there is sort of no way back. And all your mobile device management capabilities are gone from Intune. So in Intune websites, mobile device management is completely gone there. Everything you do happens in Config Manager, which is, of course, way more cool, and if you use Config Manager, the number of devices you can manage with Intune actually increases. I don't have the actual values, but Bing it and you'll find it. It's the, and yes, I do Bing, and I know you guys don't, but I like it because of the pictures and the results. And the calculator tool is better in Bing. That's true. The calculator tool is better. I'll show you when we have time. So we got, we have the connection set up, and that means at that point we have to think about the users here. Could they start adding the devices, their own devices, into Intune so we can manage them using Config Manager console? Now, By default, a user is allowed to hook up 5 devices in one Intune license. That's the licensing model. If you have Intune licenses for your users, then I think it's $4 per user per month extra, and you have Intune license as well for mobile device management. These prices may vary, and when it comes to licenses, I try to keep away from them as far as possible. And I guess you guys do too. Software we can buy, but now when the mobile devices, when a user has a Intune license, the user can start hooking up their mobile devices into Intune. And because of the Azure connection and the Azure AD connection, they can use their own username and their own password to do so. And the cool thing happens then, because Intune is now configured by Config Manager. The cool thing is that Intune will give us a, let's say, little portal for the mobile devices to connect to. And, well, we can set up profiles for mobile devices to configure them automatically. That's pretty cool. User connects its mobile device, and the first thing that happens is that the mobile device is going to download a configuration profile. And everything that we put in there will be downloaded to the mobile device, and the mobile device will then be completely configured the way we like to configure this. This could include Exchange connectivity. So we could say, hey, you know, we have Office 365, so you connect to Office 365 for your email. There's Wi-Fi, there's some policy settings we could say, we could tell what mobile devices are allowed or are not allowed to do. There's certificate profiles we could set up. Many different things are automatically downloaded and installed on that mobile device. And it does not stop with Windows stuff. iOS and Android are also supported. And no matter what you do, just don't use Android. Because I don't like that. So go to your boss, say, hey, I don't need Android anymore. Why not? Because Alex says so. It's easy. And maybe he accepts. So with this in mind, with this setup in mind, let's just quickly save this. Why, Alex, would I save this? Well, maybe I need this later on again. Then with this in mind, what does it all look like? So if we check the online environment, let's go to, whoa, I got a very small, this is something we can read actually. So this is my, this is my Office 365 environment. Let's go into the admin part. And I already have set up the Intune environment, and there's down here I got my Intune management portal, and you might have seen this before. Now the cool thing with demos on online services is that if it fails, it's not my fault. So I'm safe. There we go. This is the Intune environment. Most of the stuff that you see here is all related to managing your workstations. You can manage your machines, you can set up updates, you can set up anti-malware solutions for this. There's deployment of applications, also for mobile devices if Config Manager was not involved in here. But if you check the admin environment, and if you would check the mobile device management stuff, I got this message here. It says Mobile Device Management Authority is set to Configuration Manager. Now this is the notification for Intune to me that says, okay, if you want to do mobile device management here, you are chanceless. There's no way you can do it here because we have Config Manager involved. I once had the nice situation where an old Config Manager environment has been migrated to a new Config Manager environment. So, and it was a side-by-side migration, so that means that there was an old site, let's name that site S01, and we got a new site, S02. Now, Config Manager the old site was connected to Intune already. So I was kind of afraid, like, okay, if that happens, what would happen with Intune? Because Intune, well, it's going to deal with this new site here, and how is it going to use this? And it was actually surprisingly easy. My new site, I just created the Intune connector. I just connected it there, and I got a warning message. It says, hey, Intune seems to be that it was connected to this other SCCM site. Do you want to override the configuration in Intune to work with this new site? Answer was yes, and indeed, it just worked. Awesome. So it was really easy. It's more easy than, for example, switching back from Config Manager integrated to standalone Intune, because therefore you would need Microsoft support. So that just worked. And that's basically all I could show you from Intune itself, because we are talking now about Intune combined with Config Manager. So let's open up Config Manager. We recognize this screen, right? I'm running my console locally on my computer here. My Config Manager environment is at home. So let's hope direct access is not failing on me here. And but I believe it will work. It always works. And let me just quickly, to be completely sure, also open up a backup plan to get into my Config Manager environment. So this is my Config Manager, and I'm going to also start my remote desktop client just to be sure. So in Config Manager, to start off with the Intune integration, then in the hierarchy configuration, I need to be in cloud services here. You will start off by creating an Intune subscription. At this point, still, and I get this question very often, we can only have one Config Manager environment connected to one Intune environment. So I get the question sometimes like, hey, I want, for example, one Config Manager environment connecting to 2 different Intune environments, or maybe 3 or 4. And some hosters or let's say solution providers ask for this, but so far I haven't seen anything that allows me to do any other or more subscriptions than just one. In this subscription, when you create it, you get to choose a couple of settings. For example, I have set up a collection of users that are allowed to connect mobile devices into Intune. And this is not something that Config Manager comes up with. This is just a collection I created especially for this. So if I have bought 25 Intune licenses and I already know which users are going to make use of this, create the collection, put those users in, and here you can tell which users are actually allowed to use Intune for their mobile devices. Then you could set up your company name, and there's a URL, which actually does not even work. I can have a nice color that I like. Let me just quickly try and change that color to lime. I love the color of lime, especially in my Coronas. And then there's the site I connect, and a setting that tells us, and I need to be, there's something with my, I don't really like this. When I use Zoom and my resolution is too high, for some reason on my Surface, it does not allow me to go all the locations on my screen. So if I go a little bit to the left, I can more easily show you this. The maximum number of devices users can enroll by default is 5, but if you want to limit this, you could just create a limit here. The maximum is 5. And there is an option here for, come on, and there is an option here that says something with, oh, too bad. Only manage devices on premises. On-premise device information does not replicate to the cloud. So you could set up, now in the latest version of Config Manager, there's also a possibility to manage your mobile devices not using a cloud, but only with your online or your on-premise components. You need an enrollment point and an enrollment proxy point to do so. To be honest, I don't really see the use of this, because I think it's just too cool to be able to manage mobile devices when they are not in your office, right? So I like that better personally, but the option is now here. So this is the general page, the company portal, or the company information, you say. I got this additional information here. Don't call you idiot. This is the support info, which means that if somebody calls this number, which is my mobile, well, this is first a message that they see in their clients. I want to point to this. I wanted to point to this because I'm going to show you a little bit later on what I have on my iPad here, and then you should see the same kind of value there. I added a company logo. It's kind of difficult to get a company logo that is, let's say, this size, but I have found a way to make pictures smaller, and I'm a complete noob with pictures. So I added the company logo. which is also being shown later on, and there is also options for, let's say, the mass deployment of mobile devices. We could now set up device enrollment policies or profiles that we allow people to, administrators, to just mass deploy these devices. One of my customers is it's a cigar company. They make cigars, and they always have their IT guys deploy the phones for their users. So users do not bring their own device. Users get the company-owned device. Well, here we could set up a person, a device enrollment manager, which is responsible for enrolling those devices, enrolling the devices. And we could choose to enable multi-factor authentication or not. So the subscription itself has been set. And then in my server here, and let me just go into site configuration servers, I got a couple of machines here. This is my SCCM server. And if I show you a little bit, scroll a little bit down, show me. Then we got a, where are we? It's always that I look over this. Do you guys see it? Well, no. Oh, it's now called a service connection point. Sorry for that. This was used to be called the Intune connector, but this connects everything to our cloud services. Now at this point, there is not much to set up. It just needs a connection, so it's online, persistent. Well, I already set everything up, so I cannot make changes here, but it allows us to just connect to the Intune environment constantly. So that connection is done, and when the connection is up, then we could go back into our Intune subscription, and we have some options here to configure platforms. So we can tell on what kind of settings we'd like to have with what kind of device. Now, for example, and that's why I do not like Android a lot, there is nothing to configure, basically. We can enable Android deployment, and there are no editable properties here. Android, I'm not a security guy, but Android and security, they do not go very well together. And it makes sense. If your app store is called Google Play, it's a toy. It's not an enterprise device thing, right? If you have operating systems that you call a jelly bean sandwich or ice cream, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. Then I have more trust in products called Millennium Edition or Vista. Or RT. No, I'm not starting that. I'm not going to talk about Vista now. It's just to, okay. So we can manage, for example, iOS and Mac. We can manage Windows or Windows Phone. For example, for iOS, to enable this, and well, most people are using Apples here, so let's talk about that. What you need is a special certificate, which is an Apple push notification certificate. And that certificate is something you get with Apple. It's for free. You just need an Apple account, Apple ID, connect and request that certificate. It's given to you in a couple of seconds, and you download this. And it is basically a certificate that we need from Apple to allow us to connect to devices and send them push notifications. Now, push notifications is more or less the message we send when we would like to erase or wipe a device, or it's when we want to lock a device. That's what we have, that is what we need this certificate for. The certificate that we download here, or that we upload in Config Manager, will be uploaded into Intune using my service connection point, and that is then being used for the connectivity. I really like this one. 30 days before my certificate explodes, just send me a message. By default, the APN certificate lasts for 1 year, so every 1 year you need to do a renew here. You could also become member of the Apple Enrollment program. It's just basically Apple's way to do mass deployments of the devices. You need a special certificate for this, a deployment and a device enrollment program certificate that you would get somewhere else on the net. But for that, you would actually need some special Apple account. You have to have bought an Apple device, And you have to have a customer number, a company customer number for that. So that's what you could do with this. So that's for Apples. And then we also have the way to configure our Windows devices or Windows Phone devices. For Windows and Windows phones, we need special certificates like code signing certificates if you'd like to deploy this to Windows. Let me just, by the way, quickly go to the Windows mobile one, Windows Phone. You need a special certificate for Windows 8.0, but if you have 8.1 or Windows 10, you could do without it. And you can set up how the company portal apps look. If you have your mobile device, if you have set all this up, the next step would be to have your mobile device connect to the Intune environment. In order to do so, we have to make sure that our mobile device has let's cancel this, a mobile device has a connection to the app. Now, just to start off with this, I got this nice little application running, I think. It's called, what is it called? It's called Reflector. And Reflector makes my Windows device look like a AirPlay device. So what I need to do is have this is actually very scary because I am now showing my own stuff to you guys. You can actually see the games I'm playing, SimCity. You can see the games my daughter is playing, which are, you can see my bank account. Let me just quickly show the company portal. This is the company portal. And let's just wait for the company portal to connect. This is my, my first message. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just stay off the damn console, okay? What? And then I can accept my terms. This is actually something I can, and I'll show you in a bit in what Config Manager looks like, because you can set up these terms and conditions inside of Config Manager. So we can actually have our users accept something that we think is important to, in order to connect. So I am connected, and there's my applications. By now I deployed one application, which is Netflix, and I got my phone information. There's my "Don't call you idiot" thing. You can actually see that the color here is lime. Remember that? And I can see my two devices, my iPad. This is the one checked, and there's my iPhone as well. I can connect to the iPhone. I could, for example, remove or reset the iPhone from here if I lost it. What kind of device is it? And well, is it okay with everything? Let's go with done. So for my iPhone, and there's my logo as well in the top left corner, as you can see this. There's my little Microsoft logo I have. So for iPhone and Android, we have a special app to connect into Intune. In Windows devices, it's a setting. You just connect to your to Intune with this setting. So it looks, this application manages my device. So the options we have here to do so is in, well, first of all, assets and compliance. Let's see what we have there. If I check, for example, my list of devices, this is it. There's my iPhone, there's my iPad. They are listed. You can see that it looks like they have a client installed, which basically is true because I installed the company portal app from the App Store. And if I right-click this, we can even go open Resource Explorer and do, for example, some hardware inventory results. So there's my hardware. Okay, it's not as big a set of data as we would have from a Windows device, but there's my hardware. I can see the installed applications. So I have some nice applications installed here. The device memory is listed. There's an operating system information. There's updated the device power. Last time we checked, we had 96%. And if you go to workstation status, you can actually see when was the last time we checked, which was somewhere this morning. So we see information. We actually have a hardware history as well for this, if something changes. That's my iPad. That's the iPhone as well. And if you select the iPad, we can manage the device here a little bit. So I'm selecting my iPad, and we could, for example, do some remote access, remote app actions. Like we could remote lock the device. We could view the remote lock state. So if I want somebody to, well, somebody's device to be locked because, well, he calls the help desk and says, hey, I lost my phone, I'm afraid of losing data, then we can select remote lock. It says, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. We can then later on check the remote lock status as well, remote lock status, and it will just tell us that, well, the lock is pending. So if I check my device, and let's hope this worked, it's locked. So actions like this, see how fast this actually goes, right? It is, you know, I have a computer in my on-premise environment connected to Intune. This is sent to Intune, this message, and, well, more or less immediately, my device is being locked. Now, I very often get the question, oh, demonstrate the device wipe. And I always say the same thing, hell no. Because it takes me a long time to set everything up again, and tonight my daughter is going to be pissed off because all the games are gone. So I'm not. Therefore, we have, but this is some basic actions we could do with this, right? We can right-click the device and we can tell who is the owner of the device. Is it the company or is it personal? And basically this changes a little bit on how the device interprets the company-owned applications or the, well, non-company connected or owned applications. So you could, for example, wipe a device, but it would only wipe the company stuff from it. If it's a personal device, that is very friendly to your users, right? So, and if it wipes all the data of it, it would wipe the company data, it would not wipe the user's data. There's a setting like that as well. Now, how do we configure all this? We have in Assets and Compliance, we can go into the compliance settings. There is my terms and conditions, for example. I created terms and conditions. If you check the properties, this is when my user for the first time connected. It had this message like don't do it or just stay out of the console or something. Well, there's my please text. This is my text that I can show to those users. And like every single setting, this is something you have to deploy, right? You deploy this to, for example, that group of users. In my case, that's the collection that I want to show this to is, I did this for, by the way, all users. I could have chosen the Intune users as well. So there's my terms and conditions. We can also have some company resource access. We can set up VPN profiles, maybe email profiles. If you want to make this connect to, for example, Office 365, have the user automatically get email settings in the device, then you have to make sure that it connects to the right server. You have to point to an ActiveSync server, which is the ActiveSync server that Microsoft has in Office 365. So there's, let me check, where is that? This is the server name, m.outlook.com, which is mobile. There's my some settings, how to log on, with what kind of logon name, what are we allowed to synchronize. We can basically set that stuff up just here. And for what platforms do we would like to support this? This sounds really promising. So you got your HoloLens automatically configured with email. I don't have a device, but I would really love to see how email gets into your, would it be like it crashes open your wall and there's your email? I don't know. I combine functionality and videos I see online. So there's my email. For certificate profiles, we can pre-populate the device with certificates, maybe for accessing applications in the company. VPN connections could be set up. Wi-Fi profiles could be set up. We can pre-populate the device with Wi-Fi settings, so it automatically connects to Wi-Fi whenever you're in the company. That's a nice set of settings we can do. We can also set up policies. So we could create a policy for mobile devices and start configuring those mobile devices and, well, basically annoy users. Is that? So we could set up, this is something that I'd like to do for Windows desktop. No, Windows. I would like to do this for iOS and Mac. Remember the older version of Config Manager, it would say something with, oh, it's for mobile devices, and then you would do all the settings, and basically you had to gamble a little bit of a certain device would support all this. Now the choices are already there. So if I choose, for example, my iOS example here, I can still configure a lot of stuff. So, but it says, okay, for what kind of devices would you like this to be supported? So let's do everything but the Mac. And then we would then have the settings we'd like to be able to configure. So just select all for security and everything. And what you'll notice that a lot of stuff, well, in this case, pin codes are something that work for any platform. But you notice that some of the settings down here, for example, oh, come on, down here, for example, they are not able to be configured because my iOS device does not understand all this. Maybe Android does, maybe Samsung stuff does, maybe Windows does, but it's it already shows me what I can expect from this policy. I like that. Well, and then there are some settings, for example, this one I love, disable in-app purchases, right? That's, ooh, I love that. Cloud configurations, do you like cloud backup? Okay, do you want to allow this or prohibit this? We can do so many settings for this iOS device, and you should, if you try this, you can see that there's differences between Android and Windows and iOS for this, for all those settings, but there's so many settings. This will become a configuration item that you will turn into a baseline. That baseline is deployed to the users again, and there we go. The device for that user uses this configuration. Now, I'm not going to use this too much because I would only be annoyed by this myself, right? So I don't want to be able to do whatever I want with my device. But users, you should do whatever you want with the users. Don't care about their feelings. There's so we can configure the device. We can lock down the device by using these policies. Next up is to, well, oh yeah, that's interesting. Deploy software to the device. Now for that, I will go to my computer here. Let's go and open up my SCCM server and enter my very secret password. There we go. Why do I need to connect to my SCCM server? I use Apple, and if I want to deploy applications for Apple devices, well, what you would do is you go into application management, you go into applications, then I have this folder for mobile only apps. You can create a new application, and when creating a new application, you get the choice of what kind of application would you like to deploy, right? There's a lot of that stuff here. I'm going to choose for my App Store stuff, package from the App Store. If you want to deploy, there's also the choice to get the EPUB files, right? I know it's very small, and I'm very sorry for that, but my Zoom-it is just, I need to be talking to somebody about this. I know who I need to talk to. But there's this, if I could choose for EPUB files, there's different ways to get your EPUB files for iOS or the APK files for Android. There's Chinese websites that you go to and download EPUB files. They are hacked, it's completely secure. Don't worry about people trying to hack your device because the Chinese people don't do that. They're nice, friendly people. They're totally not interested in what you do with your company data. So you can easily do this, or you could ask the developer of this file, hey, get me a file, I'm going to pay for this, and you know what, I'll just deploy this to my devices myself. Oh, oh, this is funny. This morning and yesterday, Wally told me, I don't trust the internet. My RDP can crash. So I said, no, you can trust this, Wally. And what happens? My RDP crashes. Sorry, Wally. I will listen to you next time. So from the App Store, if I click Browse, I can go and connect to the App Store. But the reason that I have to be in my server for this, the only way to make this work is when you have installed iTunes on your machine that you have the console running. Now, I installed iTunes on my server. I just thought it would be the best location. So therefore, I am going to install an application, something with food and drink, then, right? There's a lot of applications here. I'm just going to grab a random one. You can see if there's the OK button down here, it's gray. If I want to have a 7-Eleven application, if I select that application, the OK button is not gray anymore, so now I can click, and there's my URL for the application. And now I am so let me just quickly go, and it has this very fancy way to connect. I'm going to close this session and I'm going to open the session again, but with parameters I want to open this full screen. Get me a little bit better view here. Oh, and my password is actually the same. There we go. This is full screen. This is, no, why? All right, so let's try again. So we're going to go into software, library, software, application management, applications, mobile only apps, and there we go, create an application. And then quickly, no, not the MSI. Oh, now I need to be in the Windows, iOS App Store, click browse, open the first application you see, Alex. Let's do a gamble. In arts and photography, my first app will be Advanced Photoshop Magazine app. That's what I want. Click next. And now this allows me to set up some data here about the application, but because of the time, I'm just going to be fast here, as if I fill this in real life. I don't. So then we click close, and I got my Photoshop magazine. Next step is to deploy all this. Now, I use Intune, so I don't need to set up this online distribution point for this. It will point my client to the App Store. So the collection that I'm going to send this to is my Intune users. Then it doesn't need to be on distribution points. So I'm going to click next. It's going to be installed. It's going to be available. And I want this to be available right away. And then we get some wizard pages that actually do not matter for this type of client. And when we have created the application, we now have this, we deployed the application to that user. Next step would be, I locked my device, great. And that means that I need to, yes, great. That I need to connect to the device again. Let's do AirPlay. Actually, it's a really nice tool. This like this. So this is my app again, and we can see that Netflix was deployed so far. Now my final step in this demo is that it has this Adobe, what was it, Photoshop magazine app up there as well, listed as well. We could, by the way, if we want, you could create categories. I didn't do anything with categories. We could have other applications. Well, this is basically what I have so far. Company apps, if we have our own company apps. And, well, we are now waiting for an application to appear here. Maybe if I just give it a little kick and open up the app again, it goes a little bit faster. Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to be waiting for something with, like, let's say, all of us together, but you know, the app would appear in this list. If it was Netflix, I deployed, View App, it would start deploying the application. And we got some, we can install this from here, which I already did, of course. So there's my app. It would be nice if it would appear here in a bit. So, well, the deployment for Intune, right, or connecting Intune to Config Manager, right? It's kind of straightforward. There's a couple of steps that you need to be aware of. One of the steps is to set up your Azure AD. One of the steps is to create the connector and the service connection point. Of course, you have to have your Intune subscription fixed. It's really straightforward work. I really love that it's getting more easy and more easy to do all this. One thing that, you know, you can actually go back and show this in Paint. Let's use Paint. You go away here. So there's, so if you look at all the steps that we have to take, then, well, the setup here is kind of straightforward. You know? You just start creating your profile, start creating your configuration, and you'll notice it works straightforward. New devices will easily connect. It's really, really easy to do so. And finally, we have a good way to manage our mobile devices. Best thing is that it's not limited to only Microsoft stuff, but it also manages your iOS and Android stuff. And it will just make your users, well, a little bit less happy, but us, the IT guys, we will be more happy, right? All right. So, well, one more check, but I can see on my iPad it's not there yet, so I have to be waiting a little bit more, but you know. Would you believe me if I say it would appear? Would you? Otherwise, we'll just wait together, but I know that Michael is next up, and he wants to set up his huge set of boxes with, I'm not sure what he's going to do, but he has a huge set of boxes here, so something I would watch if I were you. So thank you for now. I hope you had a great NIC. I hope to see you next year again. Come on, Michael, you can start. Hope to see you next year again, and well, have a nice weekend. Thank you very much. Please don't